This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Dye Hansen, management consultant, and with me is Christine Salvo, therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing?
Good morning, everybody. And today on the show, we have Isaac Kahn. And Isaac is a first-generation immigrant originally from Venezuela. He was Texas Tech University, guns up, in 1999, where he earned a bachelor's in business and economics and finance. Upon graduating from Tech, he was mobilized in support of the war and spent a year serving in the Judge Advocate General Office at Fort Polk, Louisiana. In 2016, Isaac began a consulting firm with varied colleagues where he worked several projects throughout Texas, Ohio, and Montana. One such project was aiding Oasis Petroleum to integrate their SM Energy acquisition. Then in 2017, Isaac joined the Bellatorium Resources as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, helping the startup organization grow and develop the personnel and operational protocols. In 2019, he started Perthshire with an idea to bring a new idea to the market. Welcome, Isaac.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, did you catch my little guns up there?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
My brother graduated from Texas Tech, and I went there for a whopping semester before moving my life to Southern California.
You probably got better weather.
It sure beats the mud storms, I can tell you that. So tell me about this new idea that you birthed with Perthshire.
So typically in my business, in the industry of mineral and royalty buying, most folks have to sell their minerals forever, and they'll never get them back. And usually the reason they would sell them is they have some life event that they need to, get more liquidity, or something like that. Some people just want to sell them, and that's fine, and that's their business. But those folks that usually have those life events, they usually don't want to sell them, and there's not a lot of available options to help them, for lack of a better term, bridge that circumstance. And what I came up with is the idea of doing term royalty that's specific only to the wells that are producing. And in that way, they're able to get, some of the cash that they would need for that period of time without selling their minerals forever. They would just the royalties that they would sell to me for a period of time, and they get them back after that time frame. And that's it.
Okay. So if it's family land that they're tied to and it has minerals, they don't have to give it up completely, or maybe so it's kind of like taking your minerals to the pawn shop a little bit.
A little bit.
Like a lease, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's you're basically renting your future checks for, and you getting your cash now at a discount, and then, in that way you don't have to go to the bank and get a loan and go through the whole hoopla. It's a lot simpler, and it's an asset transaction instead of being a debt transaction.
Great. And so you're an expert in financial modeling and figuring out whether a business is viable or not based on, really what the nuts and bolts of the business are. So what are some of the things, when our listeners might be in a business now and questioning its viability, or maybe they're considering a business and want to see if it's viable? What are some of the things that they need to be looking for?
So I think in all business, the key word is cash is king. And if you run out of cash, you're in big trouble. So the big thing you want to do is make sure that you have the cash to run your operations now, and that you have so into the future. And the way you do that is by creating financial projections of, where your business is and what it's spending right now, what it's spending into the future, and how much it's going to be making. And you create different scenarios that'll help you gauge whether you're going to be able to have that cash into the future. Not only that, but also beyond that cash situations, like, what is it going to take for your company to grow, and do you have what it needs for it to grow? So it helps you in many ways, and it helps you think about how you're going to run your business and what are the challenges that are not only happening right now but into the future.
Okay, so almost start your business with the plan of not only what you need to start up, but how are you going to grow? Where is it going to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, and when most folks start a business, they do it from different, they have different intentions for doing so. Some of it's a life passion for that particular thing, like a restaurant or such. They just love food, they love serving folks, and others, they're just, no, they just want to make as much money as possible, and everything in between. um, so in order for you to make sure that that goal is attainable, you need to make sure first is if it could pay your own bills, and then if for example, if it's somebody who you want to make this the next multi-million dollar deal, you got to make sure, well, are there enough hours in the day for me to be able to do this? Can I scale this? What is the actual realistic potential for this business? So building financial models helps you do that.
Great. And how would one go about building a financial model if you know nothing about financial modeling?
All right. Uh, well, so there's a couple different ways. First one is, if you don't know, ask somebody who does. Uh, that's the first one, and you can do that either by reaching out to friends or business contacts, or you hire somebody that's specializes in this. There's a lot of financial experts that are you know that do this for a living, usually come from an either finance, economics, or accounting background. And this is the kind of stuff that you typically see coming out of schools. Most folks are able to do this at some level, but it takes a lot of practice, and certain folks are more specialized in particular industries. So you can have a generalist, but then you have somebody like, for example, for myself, I specialize in the oil and gas industry, so because I know the ins and outs on it. So that's one way. You go ahead and find somebody who can help you do that. If you don't have somebody who can help you do that, or you have some knowledge, or you can pick up some books that help you do that. And there are a lot of resources with the small business SBA, Small Business Administration, and they have some sample business models that you can download in Excel format, and they kind of walk you through it. So there's a lot of resources also in the internet and YouTube. I believe there's various different channels that provide that kind of, they walk you through how to build a business model, a financial model, and a business model. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just to explain to our listeners the difference between a business model and a financial model is that your business is how you do business, how are you set up to make money, and your financial model, correct, is a little bit deeper than that. So what are your key differentiators between the business model and the financial model?
So the business model is a holistic approach to your business. It looks at um, not only what's gonna affect the bottom line, but it also looks at branding. It looks at what the meaning of your business, your mission, how you're gonna run. It goes over the operations. It's much more broader. A financial model is strictly what feeds into the bottom line and creates your main three financial statements: your balance sheet, your income statement, and your statement of cash flows. Um, and those three main financial statements are what give you a visual of the health of your company at any given moment. And those are also those are the the reports that banks and other financial institutions require whenever they're going to examine your business and do any kind of transaction associated with it.
I
Okay.
think that's those are great, and thank you for the differentiation. I think that's really important. So I'm hearing a lot about kind of like structured businesses. Do you have anything you want to say for like entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or the real kind of little guy out there?
So the great thing about these financial models and the three financial statements is that they they they're standardized for every business. It doesn't matter whether you're a large corporation or you're just a solo one man show. You break out your business into think of it two ways. the basics are income and expenses.
Mm-hmm.
That's those your revenues and your expenses, and you quantify what each one is. You put them into different buckets, and depending on the kind of business that you have, some buckets may be bigger than others. For example, folks that are in the gig economy, typically they're not going to have an office. They're not going to have facilities. They're not going to have, you know. Uh, Capital expenditures like you would think a big corporation may have. But just because they don't have that doesn't mean that all those other things don't exist. Say for example, if you're a painter, you still you for any particular piece of art, there's the time that you spend, the materials that you spend on creating that piece of art. Then once it's completed, the marketing that's associated strictly for that. And those you can bucket them either as cost of goods sold, what's associated with that particular painting, or you can do it as a general basis for my business, what we call SG&A, um, general and administrative expenses. So you can do that for whether it's a small business or a big business.
Okay, thanks for that.
And what were the three financial guides that you need? You need the balance statement.
Yeah. So the balance sheet,
Mm-hmm.
the income statement. Now the income statement is also called the profit and loss, the P&L. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people call it that, and then the statement of cash flows. Right, and those three interconnect. They work together to kind of give you an idea of the health of your company. And based on the numbers from there, there's an array of what we call financial ratios that think of it like they take the temperature, they gauge the health of your company.
So is a business simply not viable if your outflows exceed your inflows, or is it not that simple?
Well, it depends. Depends how much cash you have in the bank and when the potential of inflows are going to be. If your cash outflows exceed your typically in startups, cash outflows exceed your inflows in the very beginning. They just do it typically, but at some point it flips, and that's what you want. And what you want to do is that in between time, while you're still making it more expenditures, that you have enough cash to ride that wave, and should anything happen, have you know uh, uh, more something saved in the kitty just for a rainy day fund.
Okay. So I have some questions based on this because right now, I mean, we're in a very specific time in history, right? And there's a lot of businesses that had to close involuntarily for a matter of time, right? Or
Okay.
slowed down or trickle, whatever they had to do. And there's a lot of influx of kind of like, I mean, I'm getting calls all the time. Small business loan. I can't tell you, I'm getting texts, I'm getting emails. People are like throwing money at me right now, right? Because I'm registered as a LLC. But I'm curious on kind of your take on this, especially for businesses, maybe even right now, of is viability, if they don't have the cash, but they can project it, are the small loans a good idea? What are you thinking on these things?
Well, with the PPP loans, is actually a little different, because, and I'm no expert, I'm not an accountant, and the rules appear to keep on changing, so it's very difficult.
Fair, fair.
But let's assume that the government are honest about forgiving these loans, and they do. Then it would behoove you, and uh, if you can use it for what it's meant for, it would behoove you to go ahead and take that. Now, granted, I don't know what's going to happen, and they keep on changing the rules a little bit. So I would be hesitant to go into something that you don't know what the outcome's going to be. As far as loans are concerned, um, understand that loans aren't free, and and that you have to account for those interest payments, not just the principal that you pay back, and that if you suffer a downturn further, and depending on how those loans are structured, some of them may require you to personally guarantee them, and that could
Mm.
be a very bad thing. And especially if you run an LLC, the whole purpose of running an LLC is to have that corporate veil that protects your personal assets from your business assets. That would be pierced. but in those kind of scenarios. So you want to be careful what you get into. I'll put it to you this way: let's just assume you have a business idea, some project, whatever it is, and you think that your rate of return is going to be, let's say, 20%. You know, you're going to be able to make 20% annualized year over year, and somebody offers you a loan, and the loan is same period of time and gives you the cash that you need, and it's 5%. Well, if you can tell that you have a 15% change, that would be your income. The cost of the loan would go out. So in that scenario, it seems like it would be a good idea if you need the capital. If you don't need the capital, and then there's no real purpose for getting a loan. So you want to think about it this way. It's like, because just getting cash for just because it's cheap, just because the interest rate is cheap, it's not necessarily always good.
Yeah, it can be tempting. There's a lot of offers out there for business owners, and to get, what looks like it could be almost free money, but it's really not. And I know that a lot of loans also, like you said, they have specific terms. Some of them have to be paid off within a certain period of time. Some of them are forgivable. Some of them have balloon payments. Some of them have all these things. So what are some of the things that business owners can do to maybe avoid taking on loans and just be a little bit more agile with their cash flow?
Sure. I think the very first thing is, before you try to figure out where you're going to raise money, first you need to figure out what you need to raise. Well, how much cash do you need? This is where those financial models come in. Once you build one, you create, you have a model, and you have an idea of what it is that you're going to need. Let's just say you have that magic number. Then the very first thing you want to do is think about, well, how do I want to capitalize this company? Is this going to be something that I can do on my own? Do I have the cash to do that? Um, if not, where am I going to get that cash? There's several different options. One is obviously loans. The other one is grants. Another one is getting investment capital from individuals, usually what we call the friends and family raise, if you will. You can go out there to individuals, other investors, venture capitalists, and then just goes from there. You can go into private equity and so on and so forth. So just there's a lot of options to raising capital, and some are more expensive than others. And some investors, like for example, private equity, their model is typically they get really involved with your company, and sometimes one of the ways they finance it is by they issue debt themselves and they tie it to the company. So you have to be very wary of models like that. And they're okay if it makes sense, but be aware that not all capital is good capital, and that there's a lot of strings attached that they may not advertise in the front.
Okay. So how
Um,
did you get into what you do? How did you move from tech to what you do
oh,
now in finance?
sure. So I started when I got out of tech. Like I said, I was in the Army Reserve, and then we got mobilized, and I spent in it pulled me right out of that quintessential key period to go get a job and interview and stuff. So when I came back, my brother happened to be working in a startup land company, oil and gas company, and I just asked him, hey, let me sweep some floors and answer some phone calls while I interview for these finance positions. And I found out, I learned more about the business, and I got involved. And then I started working, and I got picked up by a small company, a larger, more established, smaller company in Houston. And I learned the ropes there, and I was mentored there. And I spent 4 years there, and then I got the opportunity to jump to a much bigger company, and so I learned the ropes of a much bigger company that's publicly traded, and so on and so forth. And then I went to during that time frame, I went to school for my MBA, and there I got to apply all that work history that I had and the ideas that I had about how to think about a business and how to evaluate an asset, and and apply it when using statistics in my MBA. And then when I came out of that, I realized that man, I could do this over and over again, and these things are another one of that. You know,
Mhm.
they're just everything's just very similar. It's just slightly variations of it. And that's kind of how I got into
Yeah.
it. They're just
I'm actually, that clicked for me. Actually, I'm thinking like, oh, kind of like the ride share thing, right? Like
yeah.
take the car that you already own, or the house share business where I'm already
It's
living here and I have an extra room, and you're like, you already have the land, but you need the money. I think that's brilliant. I think
mhm.
I tell people all the time, what you do one place, you can do anywhere else too. So if you have really good boundaries over here, you can extend that. But so often we kind of stay in our little boxes, right? Our little cubicles. So that clicked for me. That's really brilliant.
It's just most things are, most businesses do one of two things. They either sell widgets or they sell a service, whatever that is. And you just base it off of that, and then it's just different scales. And you can apply these same models over and over again, and visualize what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that boils it down, rather nicely. And also your path is inspiring because it wasn't about going from college straight into the great dream job. It was about college, military, sweeping floors and learning and coming up there. And I think that's one great lesson for anyone, whether they're in business for themselves or they're an employee somewhere, is that there is this process as you're building your dream that is the process to building the dream, and not necessarily the dream itself, but it's on the road.
hmm Yeah, and I think I got really blessed by having a mentor, and I cannot stress enough how important that is, to see if you can find somebody, because those folks distill, you know, decades of knowledge into you, and they dedicate that to you. And it's very hard to find that, and no amount of school is going to do that for you. There, you don't have that personal relationship. You don't have that everyday contact, and it just, I think it's something that needs to be brought back. I think it'd be very useful.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. How did you get started with your mentor?
So he was my first boss in the industry. When I told you that I came in house in Houston for my first in house job, and we just clicked. It was just luck, really. I mean, that's all it was. We clicked very well, and he just kind of took me under his wing, and I just soaked it all up. And to this day, he probably has nightmares of me popping my head in, asking another question.
I love it. I was just going to ask if you still have a relationship today. And
Oh yes, 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 yes. We still talk. He was there at my wedding.
oh,
He's
that's
met all my
beautiful.
kids.
Yeah.
So we always talk. He's a heck of a guy.
So ultimately, no matter what business you're doing, no matter what's happening, the relationships are really what stick, right? You've changed careers, you've moved all over the place, but that's something you can take with you. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So last thing on this, is your company viable? What happens if it's not? We're going to have some people that are like, I've been wondering this, and I'm going to look in these tools, and I'm going to go to the SBA and get some books. And what happens if I realize, uh-oh, I'm not in good shape here? What should I do?
So the first thing is that most things are possible. You just have to figure out how to minimize the risk. That's why uh, part of creating this model is first helps you identify, hey, do I have a problem or not? One. But that business model that we talked about, this is where why it's important to create it, because it helps you to identify what problems may exist and how you can have a contingency plan for them. It's all about risk mitigation. What's, if something happens, what's plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D? And if you can already have that thought out, you'd fare much better. You'd have an increased chance. So that's the first part. Try to figure out, what is it about your business that is so risky that that's on shaky ground. Try to talk with different folks. Look at different businesses that are similar but different in your industry, and see, how do they do that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, most of these things are, like I said, another one of those. So you can always observe, what somebody else and copy them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's no IP on success, you know.
I
So,
love that.
you know, look at what successful businesses in your realm are, and also outside of your realm. Think outside of the box. Like, what? Not everybody has to do this little thing. What about, what other things that you do in your business that are, this is just this, only I'm just focusing here. If all I'm gonna have to do is add one more piece, then I have an additional level of revenue. And I didn't change anything other than just that one other thing that you did. You see what I'm saying? So try to figure all those things out. Now, if there's a circumstance, you go through all that stuff and then your business is still shaky, then that's a situation you need to think about. Is this a business or is this a hobby?
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with it being a hobby. It may be it's not the right time. Like, for example, with COVID right now, there's a lot of things that are not going to make in this world, but there's a lot of things
Right.
that are. So you got to
Right.
look for the different opportunities. So I mean, if you see that it's just not going to make, then you got to make that decision, and it's a tough one to make. You got to say, well, do you want to spend the next 3 years to have a failure? Or do you want to figure out what you need to do, something different, so that you don't go down this line? Now, I'm not dissuading people from trying things because there's a lot to be learned, but you want to figure out if you're going to give it a go, at what point you want to pull the cord.
Right.
Because
Right.
because I mean, there's no reason to beating yourself up if you're not learning anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that. Thank you.
Exactly. And it's okay for it to be a hobby. It's also okay for the gig economy to happen as well. The gig economy is growing, and to be a gig worker or someone who just comes in, does a little work and leaves, that's all well and good. You don't have to have a company with 10, 20, 30, 40, a million employees. You
Oh
don't
yeah,
have to be that thing, and putting the pressure on yourself to be that thing and be that thing before it's time can also drive a company kind of down the rabbit hole of debt, because it's this forcing of making it happen the way I envisioned it. And
yeah,
sometimes the cash tells the story, and it's okay to build your vision. It's okay to start out small, to sweep floors, to learn, to grow, to get your mentorship, and to build up slowly, or not at all. And stop at your comfort point. There's no need to press forward into an area of debt just because somebody once told you you need to be the CEO of a big company. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show,
you,
Isaac. It
Isaac.
was a
you're very welcome.
That
pleasure.
was
Thank you.
really informational. I got a lot out of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me on.
All right. Thank you for coming on. This has been Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Hansen, management consultant.
Christine Savo, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified hypnotherapist, and certified mediator. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your day.
Have a great morning. Bye-bye.